Okay, at the higher tier for GCSE there are 5 different types of percentage problems. The first is the simplest, to find a percentage of a number. Now the first thing to get your head around is that cent here means exactly the same as it does in various other parts of everyday English, like century or centurion, or a cent as a 1/100th of a dollar. All this means is a fraction that's out of 100. Cent means 100, per means out of, like in miles per gallon. So all we're saying is what's 47 out of 100? Of always means times, so 47 per cent of £2.50. So we usually round money to 2 decimal places, so £1.18. So the percentage of something is the first type, and then the second type is one number out of another as a percentage. So you're all quite familiar with how to do this because you've all worked out test scores as percentages. But this time, instead of dividing by the 100, you're timesing by the 100 because it's out of the 45. So it's 36 out of 45 times 100 is 80%. So that's the same as 80 out of 100. Okay, so you've got to read the wording of the question carefully to distinguish which type of these is which. Now the next one is percentage increase or decrease, so percentage change really. This turns up in questions like this, and it turns up quite often in sale price questions. So they'll say a washing machine used to cost £500. In a sale, 15% is taken off. What's the new price? So you work out the percent that it's changed by. So percentage increase or percentage decrease is always the change over the original times 100. So in this case, going from 1 meter 46 excuse me, to 1 meter 53, your change is 7 centimeters. Your original height was 1 meter 46, and to turn it into a percentage, the same as the previous style, you times by 100. So percentage change, change over original times 100. Then we get on to the more sophisticated methods. Compound interest. So this is where the change happens several times. So I earn 4% in the first year, and then I earn 4% of the new value in the second year, and then I earn 4% of the new value again in the third year. So the shortcut for this is to remember that percent means per 100, so this really means 4 hundredths. So in adding on 4 hundredths, I'm going to take myself up to 104% of what I used to have. Now 104%, if you want to write it as 104 per 100, 104%, that's fine. But when you cancel that, you'll find that 104 per 100 is 1.04. The percent ends up in the second decimal place because that's the hundredths column, and we're dealing with percent being hundreds. We're doing it 3 times because we're multiplying it by 1.04 in each of 3 years. So we raise it to the power 3, and that gives us our answer in one go. So for example, if this was 106% for 9 years, think about what you reckon would change here, and it would be timesing by 1.06 to the power of 9. Now a variation on this is if instead of money being added on, as it would be in your bank account, money is taken off, as it would be if your car was losing value. So first of all, you need to know that the word depreciates means goes down. So up here we were adding on 4%, which took us to 104%. Here we're taking off 15%. So if I started with 100% and I took off 15%, I would end up with 85%. Now remember that's 85 per 100. So 85%, if I simplify it to a decimal, is 0.85. So I start off with my car being worth 5,000. After the first year it's worth 0.85 of that. After the second year it's worth 0.85 of what it was in the first year, and after the third year it's worth 0.85 of what it was in the second year. So these figures are fairly realistic actually. Cars do depreciate at a frightening rate. So this one after 3 years would have lost about £2,000. Now think to yourself again, just for a quick check, how would this question change if it was depreciating at 23% for 8 years? Well, 100 take away 23% leaves me with 77%, so this would be 0.77 to the power of 8. Now finally, this is as complex as percentages get at GCSE. There will always be one of these questions somewhere on one of your 2 papers, and the way to identify it is that it will be in the past tense, after a certain amount has been added on or taken off. This is the value, this is the price. Can you work back and find out what it was before that change? So after I take off 20%, the shoes cost £45. So after I've taken off 20%, I've got 80% of what I used to have. And that 80% of the original price is worth £45. Now I just break it down into something useful. Sometimes it's easy to go to 10%, sometimes I go to 1%. So if I divide both sides by 8, I know that 10% of the original price was £5.625. And then if I times both sides by 10, I built it up again to 100% of the original price was £56.25. So again, ask yourself how this question would change if the question said after a 12% increase. And what would change would be that instead of saying 80% here, we'd say 112% of what we used to have was worth 45. So then I'd divide both sides by 112 to get to 1%, times by 100 to get to 100%.